Now that we've covered capture and coding, let's take a look at some of the analysis tools built inside of Studio Code. The most basic, popular, and powerful analysis feature built into Studio Code is called stacking. Stacking involves taking two movies and putting them side by side to do a comparative analysis. Here I have two timelines that I want to stack together. I've set the playhead to the sync location where I want the two movies to stack. Drag the playhead to the location. Then I choose Stack Timeline Movies, and I create it. A timeline has now been created from merging both of the timelines, and the timeline movie has both of the movies stacked side by side. When I scrub the playhead, they'll move in unison. If I double click on an instance, I can view that instance with both of them side by side. I can easily swap the angles to move them around, or I can view one angle and flick between the two. In our stacked timeline, we can find two more analysis features, and those are the Find and the Matrix windows. The Find window will allow you to search for any code, label, or transcription text. It has three different modes, one for instances, one for transcription text, and also a very comprehensive find and replace tool. To start with, you can use the quick label search. By typing in part of the label or the whole label, you can quickly find what instances contain those labels. Here you'll see I've typed in K&E, and it's come up with 13. That means that there are 13 instances that contain a label that has K&E in it. If I click on 13, it will generate an instance movie with those 13 instances in it. You'll also note that in the timeline these have been highlighted, and that's great for making reference to them. Here's the list of the 13 that it found. If I click on these, I can make individual movies by double-clicking on those. Each search that I do is also committed to the recent searches list, so I can easily go back in history to look at different searches that I've done. You can also save searches. By choosing your criteria, and saving it, I can reuse this search. It's quite often that you'll reuse searches over and over throughout a period of analysis. So you don't want to have to be recreating your different search patterns over and over. The matrix is definitely the cornerstone analysis tool in the timeline. The matrix is a two-dimensional representation of the timeline. You have your rows from the timeline, which are your codes. Then you have your labels in the columns, and these are the labels that are found in the instances. So here the matrix shows the counts. It counts how many instances have these labels in it. So here you see we have a label named ANP plus 3. There are two anticipate plan instances that contain this label. If I double click on this, it will generate a movie. This is very similar to the quick search in the Find. However, you get a much broader overview of the whole timeline. You can double click on any row or column to generate a movie for the whole row or the whole column. You can also reorganize this, and you can remove parts that you don't want to look at. Because again, like the Find, the matrix can be saved and reused over and over. Another clever feature is the ability to add labels together. If I want to find out which instances contain DIW and DIW2, I can combine those two. I can also use Boolean operators such as or not. And I can find all the different possible combinations of those two labels inside the instances. The axes can also be swapped to make using the matrix a little more convenient if you have a lot of labels. There's also sorting options and export options into Excel and a text file. And finally, the matrix can be saved and used again to run against other timelines. This is especially helpful when combining a long series of timelines. The last analysis tool I'd like to cover is the statistical window. The statistical window is a scripting spreadsheet-based tool. It has 46 different commands that can be used to draw information out of a timeline and represent it in the statistical window, or drive information from the statistical window into a code window where it can be represented in a button. You can change button colors. You can push buttons up or down according to different values that can be derived in the scripting, or you can even play video instances in it. Since this window is so flexible, it's really difficult to demonstrate, but I have a quick demonstration here of deriving the kappa coefficient, and this is related to inter-rater reliability. What I have here is a series of questions that we've asked two doctors. There are 10 questions, and they have to indicate yes or no, and we're looking for agreement. So here's a matrix of when they agreed. So here we have Dr. A along the top and his responses, and then Dr. B. So here you can see we have 5 times that they both agreed and said no. We have 2 times that they both, one said yes, the other said no. Then we have 1 time where Dr. A said no and Dr. B said yes. We have no times that they both said yes. So I'm just going to code the last question and say that they both said yes. Now what you can see here is this cell is now up to 1 as opposed to 0. And our kappa coefficient has been calculated at 0.18. And we pulled all that data right out of the timeline. If I right-click here, I can take a look at the script. And I'm looking at a cell called observed agreement minus chance agreement divided by 1 subtracted by the chance agreement. Taking a look at another script, again, we're calling on another cell. So you can see it's much like Excel, and you can really jump around and call on other cells' values. Let's take a look at how we get some information from the timeline. Here we're using the overlap function. We're looking for any time that an instance has no, where the row was Dr. A, or, and, where it was no and Dr. B. And we're showing those count and then dividing them by 2. So you can see this is much like Excel and can be incredibly powerful. What's even more fun is when you get to be pushing data into code windows. You can literally create any type of report and push any kind of data into the buttons.